In this example, we're going to solve this quadratic equation. And so you'll see we have 10x squared plus 19x plus 6 equals 0. If you would like to try this first on your own, go ahead and pause the video and do so, and then come on back and we'll work a solution together. Okay, so looking at this equation, it looks like we have all of our terms on the left side of the equation and it equals 0. And that's exactly the spot or the position that we would like to be in, everything equaling 0. So our job now on this left side with this quadratic expression is to factor it, and then of course we can use our zero property of multiplication to find all of these solution values. Alright, so how should we go about factoring this? Well, there are a ton of ways that people tell you you should factor a quadratic expression. So I'm pretty partial to the AC method. I think if it's not the best way, it's pretty far up there on the list. And so I will link in the description for this video down below, and I'll show you a video on just the AC method if you would like a little more information about that method. But anyway, let's get started. So in a quadratic expression here, we have ax squared plus bx plus c. So our AC method tells us that we're going to start by taking the leading coefficient, which is 10, and the constant, which is 6, and we're going to multiply those together. So 10 times 6 is 60. All right, so at this point, we're looking for factors of 60. So what two numbers multiply to make 60 that will add to make the coefficient of this linear term, or add to make 19. And so some students, they aren't fantastic with their number sense skills, or they can't tell just by looking at this, and that's okay. But we're going to go ahead and make a factor pair list, and so all the factors that multiply together to make 60, all the pairs. And we'll always start with 1. So 1 times 60, 2 times 30, and we're just going to go through until we, 19 is 4 and 15. So we're good. We found it. We could go on, but there's no need to. And so what's going to happen is we are going to split this 19x up into two like terms. The 4 and the 15 will be the coefficients of those two terms. And it doesn't matter in which order we write them. The 4 could come first or the 15 could come first. So let's go ahead and put the 4x first and then put the 15x after that. And the other two critters here will just come along for the ride. And what we're going to do now is factor by grouping. So we're going to group this expression into, because we have 4 terms, so we'll group them into two groups of 2 terms each. Take the greatest common factors out of each one. So it looks like 2x here, which will give us a 5x plus 2. And this guy looks like probably 3. So 5x plus 2, and that equals 0. Okay, that's a great place to be because you'll notice the leftovers here are the same. So that means we can take these leftovers and factor them out. And so we have a 5x plus 2 times, and then we have our greatest common factors that we pulled out, 2x plus 3. And so here's the factorization of this initial quadratic expression. And so what it is we're going to do now is take each one of these factors and set it equal to 0. So here's why. Because this 5x plus 2 and the 2x plus 3, we're multiplying these together, and the product is, 0. So what that means is that, one of these has to be 0 if we're going to multiply them and get 0. So we'll account for both of them, and we'll say 5x plus 2 equals 0, and 2x plus 3 equals 0. And then, of course, we'll just go through a series of steps, and we'll solve each one of these two-step equations independently. And so we'll subtract 2, and we'll have 5x equals negative 2. And then, of course, we can just divide by 5. And this first value of x looks like it'll be negative 2/5. Okay, so let's do the same thing on the second equation. So 2x equals negative 3. Divide both sides by 2, so it looks like x equals negative 3/2. So what we see is that our values of x, negative 2/5 and negative 3/2. So here we are, two solutions to our initial quadratic equation. It was written in standard form, and it was equal to 0, so that's where we want to be. And, if it's not already written in this form, we would have to do some manipulation to get it in that form. But we were in a good place at the beginning. So we factored it. We set each factor equal to 0. We solved, and here are the two solutions for this equation.